Honorary Rector Vaidas and students here in Viļņas. Thank you very much for the invitation, first of all, and opportunity to address you. We are neighbors, as you know, and listening to your beautiful language, sometimes I do catch some of your words, but it's not very often. So I have a slide in Lithuanian at the very end of my presentation, but I keep it for the end. So my topic is, as you see, Tests for Culture Awareness by the Swedish artist Jan-Erik Johansson. Why did I choose Swedish? I didn't choose Latvian artists, although it would be perhaps better for this occasion, but I did it by purpose because Sweden is a country of with Protestant background, and it does have a meaning for my message, because what I'm willing to explain to you is how people in a Protestant country, I'll explain what does it mean later, how people of creativity, people from the art world, how do they try to find their background in spite of freedom given to them. Let's say freedom in many ways. So I have 4 theses right from the beginning of my presentation and kind of case study of Jan-Erik's art. And the first one is that, okay, I'm speaking about Christian art, but it's not the art you find in the church. People in a Protestant country like Sweden, probably it's also in Lithuania, definitely it is in our country as well, people who are claiming themselves being Christians, they stay away from kind of sectarian affiliation with the church. They don't attend the church, but they say, well, we are Christians, but we don't belong to the church. I presume you know the problem, more or less. And Sweden is a classical example to that. So, as you see in the first thesis, quite often Christian art in Western Europe has gone away from its cradle in the church. There are so many reasons for that. I'm not going to discuss, and we don't have time for that. So many things have to be dealt with. But what comes in the forefront, we should refer to the so-called personal opinion. You know, so many people think that the church is about ideology imposed on people. And being people of 21st century, we prefer to stay away from ideologies, as we definitely know it very well from our history, at least our generation. And so many people in our country as well, they think, well, church is just another ideology. Let's stay away from that. Let's sit in the back row and think about it before I make any decisions, and I will not make any decisions before I understand and accept personally what has been offered from the pulpit. That's thesis number 1. Second thing is Christian artists. Oh, I told you about it already. So many people who belong to the world of creativity, artists, they say, well, we belong to Christian mindset. But do you think that I need to prove it by painting persons from the Bible or the holy history of salvation? No. Can we paint still life, still being Christian? Can we paint a landscape or just a portrait of a child or a woman or a boy or whatever, and still being a Christian? Is there any difference between non-Christian still life and Christian still life? It's a good question to think about, and we as the academy back home, we have been thought about it, and it's really interesting. But it's another topic. Third thesis is that Christian art, I put it in brackets, which is created outside church walls, and by definition it doesn't belong to the church art per se, has to follow those rules for art set by the, let's say, world of creativity. And we'll see how does it work in the case study a few minutes later. Fourth thesis, different rules, but still at the same time, how the message is incarnated, if we choose this very strong word from Christian theology. So it's a problem perhaps for Protestant circles more than for Catholics, or I even don't speak about Orthodox iconography. You just heard about where it is plain and clear what the painting or icon speaks about. Now these rules are getting more complicated. This is our hero, Jan-Erik Johansson. He lives in Jönköping. It's kind of south of Sweden, not far from Malmö. And he was born in 1950. That's his portrait. And CV, but it's in Swedish. I made it a copy from internet where it was available. He has been our teacher, and we have been cooperating in several projects as Academy, and material is based on his presentations at the Academy. So, he was born in a pious Swedish family, kind of free church family, but he's not, well, a classical type of Christian, as we would probably say in traditional sense, but still closely tied to his roots of identity in this Christian background. Briefly about him. He's excellent in drawing. His drawings are perfect. The way he understands and feels the form, dynamics of the body, be it a horse, a man, a woman, whatever, animated being. He's not painting, let's say, or drawing shoes. It's a portrait of shoes. You understand the difference. And that's a miracle. It's a natural born talent. The talent has been given him by God, but he never finished his studies at the Academy of Art. And perhaps it works for his ambitions. He wants to prove himself, and he does it very well. And he's not following any school in the way he does his art. That's all by his own. This is why I'm speaking about personal understanding of ideologies. That's my personal opinion, and I do perform only when I understood something. And then I say, this is mine. What does he do? What is his method? And as far as I understand, in this conference we are speaking about method. His method is involvement of spectators. You are attending exhibition. Usually we in Latvia, we are walking by the wall of paintings. And we are sitting in benches, and we are reluctant to get involved in performance. I don't know about Lithuanians, but that's our mentality, to stay away a bit, to be reserved. And Jan-Erik wants to involve. So I would be kind of scared, because I don't like to be involved in dancing and things like that. But this is how he wants to involve people in in creation of the art piece, because the result of the art enjoyment is produced in your mind, and not only passively looking on the screen and thinking something while you are sitting in your benches, but when you get involved by acting in a way. Therefore, he has done so many theater performances, but they are not like Shakespeare and, the text being read from the stage, but they are playing with different forms, pieces of paintings. And the method is described, second paragraph here, but let's say there's a huge cross, and the cross can be, all these wings of the cross can be taken separately and combined in different way. And when you put those pieces together in a different way, you get different message, and you get different picture, after all, different form. But still it's about the cross, which was the original form. Okay, that's his method. Changing angle of the view. When you are looking at the screen, it's the same from here and from there. You heard rector from the academy, she said that from the icon, the saint is following you all the time. Wherever you go, you look from here or you look from there, eyes of the saint are always following you. That's fascination. Here it is different. When you change the angle, the picture changes. And technically, of course, it's not a flat surface. It's kind of folded paper, or metal, or whatever, or wood. And let's say it's like this. When you look from here, that's one drawing. And when you change the angle opposite, you find different painting. So it's one reality, in a way, but seen from different angles, it does have different meanings. You see what I'm pointing at? So there is no one single interpretation of art. There is no one single interpretation of art. So, so let's go kind of page by page, and I will try to use some examples for you to see, because speaking is one thing, but seeing is much better. Put in motion and add some dynamics. Art pieces not for passive perception, but involvement, personal involvement. How does it started? How did it start? Jan Erik was a young artist, late 80s, but his real, let's say, start was early 90s, when, as we know, 20 years ago or more, Soviet Union collapsed in Lithuania, in Latvia, in Estonia, and everywhere, wherever it was. And this contrast between one ideology imposed on people and subjective freedom, that was somehow his message. And no wonder why. It's kind of logical outcome, or the beginning. So these two things met. That was his topic probably. I don't know his family life, but you know, sometimes you are, as a young man, an artist, you are protesting against fathers and your parents. So I want to be free. And living just across the Baltic Sea in Sweden, it's quite obvious. He came to Latvia several times, he had some exhibitions in Riga, and this is how we got to know each other. So this is pillar. Its height is about 4 meters, probably even more, and it's made of veneers, kind of light construction. And it's made of 2 parts, as you see, and you can combine those 2 parts, 2 pieces. Of course, the red one kind of reminds you about Soviet Empire, and well, it's not a painting, it's not installation, it's not a sculpture, something in between. These, you recognize, Lithuanian, Latvian, and Estonian flag. It was back in late 80s, already before we got independence. And these pieces can be combined in different ways. And when he had this exhibition in Riga, it was put in different ways, and people were asked to combine them as they want. And you see different messages. And when Jan Erik speaks about it, and he loves to speak about it, he says, what is on the top, what is under, what is next to you, different emotions, different feelings, different stories to tell about. So go to next, contrasts and expression. What do I mean here? Contrasts are emphasized by pictures from different cultural settings. Let's say he is making trilogy or tetralogy, several paintings in a row, and each one kind of tells a piece of the same story, kind of process from peace, from stagnation to broken reality, to revelation of some new truths. And here is a picture, just one, the fourth. Pax in Latin means peace, but pax in his context, in this context, means stagnation. Sometimes peace is about stagnation. Rex, ruling, power, depression, oppression, whatever. And lex is a law. But then comes lux, and lux in Latin means light. And this is the final piece of the tetralogy, lux. Of course, the light comes from Sweden. As you see, these are Swedish colors, blue and yellow. But be as it is, the lightning comes white, and there's nothing to do with Sweden, but still something. Okay, it's just but Pax was painted with French impressionist Claude Monet. You know, this pond with water lilies. It's beautiful, but it's stagnation, rotting water with, frogs. And then comes installation and participation. Two pictures are coming. Exodus. You know, Exodus is a story from the Bible, from the Old Testament. It's a key story in the Bible because it speaks about going out from slavery to freedom. And it has been a subject or issue for endless performances, paintings, and poems or whatever, because it's archetype, going from slavery to freedom. How to make myself free. And in this case, Exodus deals with nation. It's not so much personal, but nation going out from slavery. And what do we have here? Entering Promised Land. But before entering Promised Land, you have to cross the desert, hardships. Almost whole nation dies before entering Promised Land. And also they have to cross the Red Sea. But what is the difference between those two, desert and the sea? Desert is to be crossed by your foot. And that's your effort. This is how do you do that. But the sea is miraculously opened up, and they go through the sea because through the miracle, the God showed them the way. Opened up, dry surface, and they could go like on a highway. So, God's involvement into history. So this is installation. It's in the church, and Red Sea is in front of us. That's the floor. That's the church floor. Benches are taken out, pews are out, and then you see Egypt, the symbol of Egypt in forefront. These are stone blocks. Okay, it's kind of a reminiscence of Soviet Empire, if you want. And then comes Red Sea. These rusty metal pyramids. It's a symbol of what? Difficult to say. Jan Erik says, well, I wanted to put sheep there because people are like sheep taken by the leader, taken out to the Promised Land, but in this case, they remind maybe Egypt in your heart, in your soul, which still is there, therefore you die before entering the Promised Land. But he says that having this installation not only in Riga and other post-communist countries, he had this installation in China, asking, communist country, and these people, Chinese people, went through the sea, and he said, I can just imagine what kind of feelings did they have. Because in communist country you are not permitted to speak about religious matters, you are not permitted to speak about slavery and freedom, etc. But still you have to get involved in order to touch your inner feelings, touch your inner willingness, or somehow to get a grip of your wish to break free. But please pay attention to the middle of the picture where the altar was. Well, it is, but it is hidden. It is hidden behind that kind of doorway, and more about that. This is what I told you about, but please, if you read the last paragraph of this slide, we are invited by this installation and joint activity of visitors to think about the answer to the question, who am I? But more important than that is what was it? How do I know? Where I am, in the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. So, to feel the process of seeking truth. And symbolic meaning in this. I told you about stone pillars, I told you about metal pyramids, but sea and desert. But there is one more symbol in this, and I asked you to pay attention to this altar cover. This is a doorway, black, but lintel. What is lintel? You probably know. No? Lintel is above your head when you go through the door. Lintel is broken. And in the middle of the broken lintel, there is a ladybird. Ladybird is a small, tiny insect, red. We love it. Definitely in Lithuania too. Small, tiny, bizbizmarīt. How you call it? Okay, yes. Božja korovka in Russian. And we have children kind of chanting, bizbizmarīt mājīt deg. So, ladybird, ladybird, your house is burning, and then she flies away, and so on and so on. So, we love this small, tiny insect. We never do harm to this. And he has used it. Why? The point is that this ladybird, when Jan Erik speaks about it, he loves to speak about it, that ladybird has, when you analyze the name of it in different languages, it turns out that it is beloved insect in many cultures. And it does have meaning or connotation with the Mother of God. I'm not going to tell the whole etymology as he presents it, but his point is, this is a symbol. I speak about Christian values, not mentioning them. But lintel, which has been made of concrete, very depressing, oppressive ideology, symbol of oppression, lintel, you are supposed to go through the doorway, but lintel is broken, and there is a light, a spotlight on this ladybird. So this is a symbol. And he has another painting or what? You see, well, not lintel, kind of stone pillar with a ladybird going into that and breaking it down, and it falls down. So it's a very deep symbolical meaning, and probably without explanation you don't agree perhaps. But when you listen to Jan Erik, you have to agree, because that was his idea. Why this ladybird is a toy? Because symbols are last paragraph, symbols are sometimes very boring to analyze. They belong to ideology, because symbolic meanings, symbols and their meanings, they are strong, they are traditional, and there is nothing new about it. But he has made this ladybird as a toy with wheels, etc. Because art is about game, and life should be taken more easy. I'm not meaning, just fun and circuses, but art is about playing games in a way. Unless you play games, you are not capable to enjoy art, after all. Yeah? Truth personally accepted. So it was rather short, but the point, I hope you understood, personally accepted truth. And sometimes when you find the truth, it doesn't look the same. It was prescribed. One thing you can accept it right from the beginning. But when you start to accept it, some things stay where they have been from the beginning. The truth is there. And it's kind of paradox. You still have to find it for yourself. This is what Skydrid Gutman, rector of the academy, said about spiritual realism. The church, sometimes people use a strong word, church is dead. No, church is not dead. It will be always alive, but because people will want to find it anew and personally accept it. So without personal acceptance, it doesn't work. Rebuses, it's another way to invite you, to find your personal truth, to find your personal solution. It's a method. There is no art for emotions. It's just playing mind games. And as you see some things, it's like a rebus, letters. How many, when Jan-Erik shows this art piece to people, to audience, he says, how many words you can read in this text? Yeah. And you see Sator, it's Savior. Yeah. It's the first line and left column, and also from the bottom up on the right side. And so it's a frame, yeah? But then you find opera, and then you find tenet. Tenet means principle of doctrine. So it's very heavy. But Sator is about involvement. Skydrid told you about changeable part of people, changing and firm. So what are relationships between those two? Another thing, 7, when Jan-Erik speaks about it, he says, how many times did Jesus ask people to forgive? Is it enough 7 times that I forgive? No. Christ said 70 times 7. So it's on the right side. But once you do that, that's number 7 painted once. It's your critical you. Because 70 times 7, it's kind of endless, having no personal affiliation. But did you do it once in your life? Then you can start to think about 70 times 7. Yeah? Of course, you need explanations, but that's how he works. Inviting viewer to join in, probably it's not something new. We know that 3D cinemas, it's not hot news anymore. So he uses this method and invites people to join the angle or perspective. This, I don't know, painting installation or whatever, it's a huge one. Like the screen, you see, it's almost 1-to-1 on the projection. This is about divorce, family. And when he speaks about it, he says, these horses, they symbolize conflicting sides. A woman and a man who can't find the same language anymore. These horses are, backs, having backs towards the viewer. But in the middle, there is a painting which could be seen from different angles differently. Horses are flat surfaces. That's from the left, you see cube. It's very fragile, transparent. Something is naked. Something is probably too open. And then comes from the other side, there is a ladder, stairway, still kind of hope to find language uniting them. This is how he explains. So it's a method. I don't say it's genius or something new or revelation probably for many of you, but it's a method you can use in education to enjoy art as a dialogue or as a starting point to talk about things which are important for us. What is it? Yeah, this is what I told you. Another installation or painting, Red World. Honestly, I don't remember exactly what it was about. But this is from the right side. You see that the planet, the globe, is kind of red, bluish left side, and right is dangerously red. And it's America, South, Latin, and North America. And from the other side, you see that it's kind of blue-gray with triangle. As far as I remember, he said, well, you are free to choose your interpretation of the painting, but it was kind of global threat. Probably this one was the start, and it was the end of the story. Okay, you are free to choose your interpretation. But again, I demonstrate you the method. I don't speak about particular art pieces which are worthy of appreciation. And finally, playing games with convertible pieces. This is what I told you about already. You take a big painting, you separate, you cut it into 4 or 6 or 7, like puzzle. But you put pieces of the puzzle in a different way. You know, when you buy for kids puzzles, you can't combine them in a different way. It's only one way to put them together, which makes a picture. But in this case, this is a puzzle which can be put together in different ways, and it tells different stories. There is just one picture, which is kind of vertical or quadrat, as you see on a photo. Dividing line is right in the middle, vertical one. If you take those pieces and put one above the other, you find the map of Israel. When you put it next to each other, like here in photo, you see the first letter of Hebrew alphabet, Aleph. It looks exactly like this. And then you find horses on both sides, conflicting nations in the land, and Jordan River, Blue Stream, crossing the country, etc. But when you put one above the other, you find it's really fascinating. And he has dozens of those combinations and audiences welcomed. And that's how his art is enjoyed. Then it's really interesting. It's a starting point to speak about life. Conclusions, several theses, probably 6 theses for us to remember or keep from this presentation. The first one, the truth is known, but it must be personally understood and accepted. The second thesis, sometimes how could we get this personal message out from stiff rules? Do it contra, combine it, and you find some logics into it. Yeah? Third thing is, of course, there is a threat. Being so free, feeling so free to break rules, do contra, you are in dangerous territory. You are under risk to lose integrity. At least Jan Erik doesn't want to do that. He still wants to be integrated, yeah, and positive. And number 4 is, we don't deal with destruction. We speak about construction of life. And we are living in 21st century, the beginning of that. We have seen collapse of empire, and we are in front of the world we didn't know before. We are about construction of the new world, where people with personal opinions and personal involvement will matter. That's great. And number 5, Number 5, classical symbols have meanings, but sometimes we are bored and fed up with those classical meanings. We know them. We know them. And paradox is that ideologies, in many ways, I don't speak only about politics, ideologies are called to reveal truths of those symbols, but practically we don't like those ways to impose truths. So what should we do? And finally, there is an obvious tendency, at least in Jan Erik's art, to use very old symbols, but in a cheerful, how you say, following rules of the game, probably in a different way, and then this art becomes a witness of this truth, but in a very personal way. And I hope that it will not lose the contact between the truth and people who are seeking for truth. So, thank you very much for attention, but this is my final one. Sveikinu gimtadienio proga.